Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Our guest today is Andrey Medvedev. He's a former member of the Russian paramilitary group Wagner, headed by Evgeny Prigozhin. On January 13, he crossed the border between Russia and Norway, and he's with us from Oslo. Thank you very much for being with us.
Hello.
When you're recruited in July 2022, you're very quickly sent to Ukraine in the eastern region of Donetsk, and you decide a few months later to flee. Why did you take that decision? What happened?
The methods whereby people who didn't want to fight were being forced to do so under the threat of death, and in principle the orders themselves from the commanding officers, which were stupid, without any regard for the soldiers, and were simply considered as cannon fodder. These issues and many others were the reason, and if I were to go into detail, then I would have to talk about this for days on end.
When you decide to flee, I mean, this is a very, very serious decision, because we know how Wagner treats very violently those who flee. Did you know what happened to those considered as traitors by Wagner?
Of course, I was aware of this, and there were attempts by many others to leave the conflict zone, and in most cases they were captured with very, very severe consequences. Each would say at some point that he would just go ahead. I'd been thinking about this for a long time, given all that was going on. And once I began to understand exactly what was happening, I simply no longer wanted to remain part of this. And all this was being done without any consideration whatsoever. And I knew that it would be very difficult to turn back, but it worked. I was able to escape.
Were you aware of what happened to a man by the name of Evgeny Medvedev, who was killed by a sledgehammer? It was filmed and made public by Wagner.
Yes, I was aware of this and of many other instances where this happened. Attempted escapes by other fighters with consequences regarding refusal to obey. There was no choice. The same could have happened to me. And there's no doubt what would have happened to me. I gathered my thoughts and strength and went ahead.
Have you directly witnessed people who, like you, tried to flee and were executed by Wagner? I'm talking about direct testimony. We know the role played by the Internal Security Service at Wagner in those executions.
Well, what I can say, I in fact witnessed many things, but there are procedures underway regarding my case, and I can't really comment on any of this.
So you've also seen crimes against civilian population in Ukraine, but you don't want to talk about it?
Well, I did not see any of the fighters carrying out atrocities against the civilian population. There were instances by the commanding officers. I could testify to that, but on the part of the fighters themselves, no, I didn't see that.
So what you're saying is that commanders of Wagner have committed crimes in Ukraine that you have seen or heard about.
Well, again, I will be giving evidence on this, but I simply cannot answer this question at this particular time. I'm sorry.
You've met Evgeny Prigozhin. Can you tell us about this?
Well, this was in the training center. In one of the training centers, I came for further training as an engineer. He came to those who'd been freshly called up. He spoke to everybody. He came out with very eloquent speeches and saying how everybody else was a scoundrel. He said that Bakhmut had already been captured at the beginning of November, so all we had to do was enter the city. I gave my opinion that yes, we could enter the city, but what would the cost be? Well, the meeting did not end very well for me.
How did it end for you?
Well, I had a long discussion with the commander of our unit, and after that I was locked up in a container.
Why? Because you disagreed with what Prigozhin was telling you?
Well, I think probably because I should have in fact kept my opinion to myself.
Evgeny Prigozhin, I'm talking about it, so you tell me what happened. But also because we see him more and more publicly on the ground, in his media, especially around the town of Bakhmut in Ukraine. He is criticizing the lack of support, the lack of ammunition. He's accusing. What is he up to? We get the impression that sometimes he's openly contesting the authority of the Russian army.
Well, looking at everything that has been said and all the footage, I'm surprised how, when you look at the citizens of Russia who criticize the war and also criticize what is being said by our army, I'm surprised how Prigozhin has not been charged. That's the first point. Because nobody questions the role of President Putin as the president of the Russian Federation, and how could it be that he has not been charged? And the behaviour, well, I've always said this, my opinion, again, is that he is mad. He really doesn't know what he's doing. He thinks that he can do anything he wants. And in any event, I think that once this whole display spectacle is over, I think that his own men will kill him.
Do you think he's obeying to the orders of Vladimir Putin, or that he stopped to do that?
Well, if he did not obey Putin, I think he would already be gone if he did not follow those orders. It's very basic, the very basic rule that nothing can be done without the authorization from those who are in authority and hold power.
Andrey Medvedev, in the eyes of many Ukrainians, as a former member of Wagner, even if you fled, you're probably a criminal and shouldn't be granted asylum by Norway. What is your reaction to their feelings?
Well, this was probably one of the key factors, hearing what people had been saying, and this was part of what drove me to flee all this. And I went ahead, and I would like to say to the Ukrainian people, I would like to apologize for being part of this, and I would finally ask all Ukrainians not to hate the Russian people. Russian people are good people, and the fact is that they are subjected to the propaganda. They have been, throughout this whole period, subjected to this. You mustn't hate them. The Russian people had no part in the decision to go ahead with the war. We have our authorities, people at the top who made this decision, and they brainwashed everybody else. And I really would ask everybody to understand that it's not a decision of the Russian people, it was that of those in power. And that's it.
Last question, Andrey Medvedev. You are in Norway right now. You've asked for asylum. You still have a meeting with the justice for a recent incident. Do you think, first of all, that you're safe in Norway and that you will be granted asylum?
Well, I wasn't thinking of anything at all. What happens, happens. And if I'm kept, then I'll try to organize my life and go in a different direction. And if I'm sent back to Russia, then I'll face that. But at least I've told the truth, and I'm prepared to pay the price for that.
Thank you very much, Andrey Medvedev, for your time and for answering France 24's questions from Oslo. Thank you for watching this edition of the interview. Stay tuned for more news.